Hi, welcome to my channel, Farm to Table with Amber, where we can grow, cook, and eat together. I'm Amber, of course, and in this video, I am going to demonstrate many different pieces of equipment that you would use or gather so that you can go ahead and process all of the food that you either grow or have excess of. And I've been canning for many years. I grew up on a raspberry farm and other fruits and vegetables, of course, that we would grow. But my dad would come home with truckloads of food to can, not just a few boxes, but we as kids would help my mom can a whole bunch of food. And of course, my husband and I and our 5 kids, we have about 5 acres where we grow food ourselves. And we process and can a lot of different things. Now I want you to stay tuned because not only am I going to show you all of the different pieces of equipment that I use, but also my favorite way to put up food and why it's my favorite. And also each little segment will be tips and tricks on how to use these different pieces of equipment. And of course, it can be for beginners or for seasoned canners as well. You might learn something on here, so stay tuned. So I've gathered a lot of equipment here that I have used over the years. And I will tell you a little bit about each piece of equipment here. Now it's not extensive or complete, but you'll be able to see here and get some ideas of how to do food. Now I don't have my freeze dryer on my counter here, but I will be talking about that as well. And I plan on making another video on the pros and cons of owning a freeze dryer because I'm sure you'll be interested. Many people are. All right, let's get started here. We're going to talk first about a pressure cooker, but before I get into the details of that, I highly recommend that you get the Blue Ball book. And it's just a guide to home canning, freezing, and dehydration. So that's a really good book. And then also I go to my local extension and get information on how to process the food in the pressure cooker. The local extension will give you suggestions on how high of pressure you should process your food. And here in our valley, it's a high elevation. And so we pressure cook everything at 13 pounds. And you want to make sure you get your lid tested as well. So we get our lid tested yearly and make sure everything's working properly on this pressure cooker. Let me know if any of you have done any pressure cooking with your Instant Pot, because that's not something that I use. And I've heard that it's not safe. So let me know if you feel like it has been safe for you in using your Instant Pot. So in the comments down below, I'd love to know. I've also heard about a dual pressure cooker that can be electric and also on the stove. So I've never tried that out. I think it would be fun to do that. This pressure cooker has a nice heavy lid with a gauge there on top. It goes on there. And then here's the gauge. And like I said, 13 pounds of pressure. Once it hits, once you get on this gauge, once it gets to 13 pounds of pressure, then you start gauging how long you're supposed to process your food. You start timing for pints about 15-20 minutes, for quarts 20 to 25. And I like this that our extension gives us because it tells us exactly how to process everything. The Ball Blue Book will as well, but again, depending on your elevation area, you need to ask your local extension services what they recommend in processing your food. And your food will be safe if you follow that closely. So a pressure cooker, you're going to do things like vegetables and meats and tomato products. And that's mostly what you do in a pressure cooker. And one of my favorite things to do are green beans, but because we grow so many beans in our garden, and we also take them to the farmer's market, but we have so many left over and that we eat fresh from the garden, but then we also process them and use these throughout the year. I love canned green beans. I just think they taste delicious. Some of the equipment that I use, there is this nice jar grabber, I guess is what you can call it. And I just hold it from above and grab this way and I use it that way. Some people like to use this end, but this is the side that I use to grab my jar with. And you just open up your pressure cooker and grab it out once they're finished. And of course, you want to open your pressure cooker away from your face so you don't burn your face. And then these, of course, seal up. You don't need to be afraid of a pressure cooker. I know that a lot of people are, but if you watch it and you pay attention to the times and you don't let the gauge get to the danger zone. There's a danger zone on here. You just turn the heat down if it starts to get close to that, but you always want to keep your processing time at the pounds of pressure recommended in your area. So again, ours is 13 pounds per pressure, and so we have to keep it at the 13 pounds. You get below 13 pounds and they say that your food could be unsafe if you get below it. So always keep it above. So always keep it a couple notches above that and watch it carefully. Again, if you feel like you don't love watching a pressure cooker, then you may not want to do your food this way. Now I'm going to show you 2 different types of water bath canners. All right, so I have 2 water bath canners that I use, and this one's a little bit older and a little bit bigger, and I mainly do a lot of fruit in here. And peaches, pears, you can do raspberries, and then I've also done peach pie filling as well. You can do a hot pack and a raw pack, and the difference between the two are basically the hot pack is you are going to simmer your food, and then you put it in the jars hot, and then you add hot water to it if needed, and then you process it. Raw pack is just putting your fruit in there cold. Then you put hot boiling water on it in your syrup, or your syrup is hot and boiling, you put it in there and then you process it. So that's the difference between raw pack and hot pack. And this is my peach pie filling. And of course I put this all in here hot, put the lid on top, the ring, put it in the canner and processed it for however long it needed to be processed. And so that's the difference between hot pack and raw pack. Okay, so in this one right here, this one's a Fruit Saver brand. And the lid just comes off like this. I kind of like this for a lot of my jams. And I'll even do other little things in here like pickles or whatever. But you just put a little bit of water in the bottom of this. And then your jars sit on top of that and everything just gets steamed in this. And so this is raspberry jalapeno jam that I make. And those would just sit right in there. And here's some more raspberry jalapeno jam. And I do lots of kinds. Here's a black currant jam from the black currants that I raise and that my dad raises as well. Black currants are so good for you. They're the highest in antioxidants of all the fruits. You go from the dark color down to the light color, and they are the highest in antioxidants. So I really like black currant anything, jam, jellies, juices, whatever. So I like this. This is an easy, super clean, nice one to use. Then you put the lid on top. There is a gauge, and the gauge is in that little handle. And you just process your jams in here. And within 20 minutes, you can have your jams processed. And this is a nice, clean, easy, simple way to do that. Now, as far as pickles go, I do have kind of a fun little recipe for sweet pickles. It's my mother-in-law's recipe. And this, you just chop up all the pickles, you make the brine, and you boil it on the stove. And then you have a syrup, a sweet syrup that you also pour onto this. And you pour it in there, put the lid on and the ring, and then they just seal themselves. You don't have to process. I know people might have different opinions about that, but this has enough sugar in it, enough vinegar, that you just put that lid on there, and they are the easiest pickles to make. Absolutely delicious. Let me know what kind of water bath canners you like and which ones you prefer. Water bath canning is simple, easy. It's easier than a pressure cooker, but you have to use a pressure cooker for certain types of foods. So pressure cooking, water bath canning. And now I want to tell you a little about stock pots and juicers. So behind me on my stove here, I've got a stock pot. And I used this when I did how to make pumpkin puree. And this is nice because you can chop up a whole pumpkin and put it in here, maybe even 2 pumpkins, and you just boil that, and then you make your pumpkin puree. So you should watch that video on how to do pumpkin puree. But I love this stock pot because I'll also put a lot of corn on the cob in here and just blanch that to get it ready to cut off the cob. So this is really nice to have. So a stock pot, and then of course you'll want your tongs to have for your stock pot to get things out. Also, with any type of canning, it's really nice to have this funnel that you can fit right on your jar and be able to put food into that so you don't have any spills. And then this is a nice little gadget that once you get your food in here, you go around and you get the air bubbles out. That's an important step when you're doing your canning. So if it says to do that, make sure that you do it. And I like the plastic ones so it doesn't scrape the bottles so much. And you'll want to get bottles that are nice and smooth on top without any cracks so that they'll seal. And you'll want to get really nice lids as well. And I like, the Ball brand is great. And so I have the Ball brand. Or a few other brands are good too, Kerr and Mason. So those are good brands. Now, besides having a nice stock pot, it's nice to have a really good juicer. Now my juicer is old, so it's gonna look like it's gone through the ringer. But here's my juicer, and you've got the double layers there. The water goes down in the bottom, and anything that you want to juice out goes in the top. And you make sure that that water does not boil out, or you'll have really burned smelling food. We've ruined a few batches of grape juice before. So you have the 3 layers in your juicer. You've got this layer here where the water goes. You've got this layer here where the juices seep down into it. And then you've got the top layer where you put your items that you want to juice, like grapes, currants, cranberries, whatever you're juicing out, raspberries. And then this tube goes right here on the end. You clip it on. And then what I like to do I simply just have a little pan underneath here, like on a stool or something, and let the juices come out of this. We clamp it shut with that. So it's clamped until you're ready to open this up, and then the juice comes out. It's really hot, you gotta be careful, but the juice comes out, and then we just pour it right into our jars, really hot. So then we put a lid and a ring on top of that and just let it seal by itself, which is kind of nice. And they seal nice and hot, and the seals go down. Once you see the seal pop down, you know that your food is sealed. So that's how we do our juice. So we really like to use our canner, and we use it a lot. We make grape juice and we make black currant juice. I'm going to do some cherry juice and raspberry and lots of different kinds of juices that you can use. So those come in handy, those juicers. Now you've learned about a pressure cooker, water bath canners, stock pot, juicer. Let's talk a little bit about dehydrating food and also different ways to seal the food besides some of the things that I've shared with you. A pressure cooker, of course, the food seals naturally after you bring it out. It's nice and hot and those lids pop. Same with the water bath canners. Some food you're not going to do water bathing or the pressure cooker, so you'll need sealers to actually seal the food, and we're going to go over that. Now let's talk a little bit about dehydrators and sealing, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the freeze dryer that I have as well. And I know that this is a lot of equipment. You don't have to have it all at once, but you could get a little bit at a time to start doing your canning. You can get any kind of dehydrator. This one's kind of nice because I like how you can stack more layers on. So you can add more or make it as small as you want for a smaller batch. It's called the American Harvest Snack Master Dehydrator. I like this because it also has trays for different things that you want to do. For example, this can be used for fruit leather. So each tray, you would add one of these and then you pour your fruit on here. I'm actually going to do some old peaches because my family is not eating them fast enough. So I plan on pureeing this, pour it on here to make some fruit leather. and then they won't go to waste. And fruit leather is really tasty. And if you aren't doing fruit leather, then you just leave that solid tray off and you add your items on here. Now, I did a video on how to dehydrate tomatoes, and these are some of my dehydrated tomatoes. Now you might say, why are they not in a 7 ml Mylar bag, which is typically what I use? But I use these so quickly that I just put them in here and they stay nicely 8 months to a year. They're just fine in here and I use them within a year. These little bags right here can be sealed with a food saver. And I like the food saver. It removes the air and then seals it simultaneously. And those are kind of nice to have. But when doing dehydrated stuff, you can seal any way you want. If you're just going to use the food quickly, that's great. Dehydrated food, the moisture is removed through a heat process, and it's fun for snacking. A lot of my family members love dehydrated food, and we love dehydrated apples. We love to snack on them, and mostly they just get put in a bag and we eat them. But you can also put them in jars, and then I'm going to show you a fun way to seal them. Dehydrators are pretty much self-explanatory. You just slice things in small, thin slices so that they dehydrate quickly. And then you just watch them. When they're done, then you just pull them off of the trays, and then you can put them in bags or jars. I think things look really pretty in jars. So here we go with a jar. And then I'm going to show you a couple ways that I would seal this jar. So, and you can put an oxygen absorber in here if you want this in for long term. I am not going to have this for long term, so I'm just going to seal it like this. This is a really handy dandy nifty tool, and I'll leave a link for this also in the descriptions. But it's just an electric mason jar sealer. It's a vacuum sealer, and it's run by battery. You just put that right over your jar, and then you hit that sealer. And when it's done, it'll tell you when it's done sealing. So I'm just going to take a little look here. You can hear the difference in the machine. And I'm going to wait probably about 15 to 25 seconds, and then we'll see if it's sealed. Here we go. Okay, now I heard a little click. So that came off. All right, so it's nice and sealed. Look how fast that was. So super easy. It can adjust to both a wide mouth jar and a regular lid jar. And that's kind of a fun thing here. I'm actually going to demonstrate it on here. When you turn it on, there's a section. Isn't that cool? So then, yeah, that section's kind of fun. So now we've got nice sealed dehydrated apples. And you can do the same thing with your tomatoes if you want them in a nice pretty jar. Otherwise, you can just leave them in bags or put them in a 7 ml Mylar bag. I recommend doing at least a 7 ml bag for sealing your freeze-dried food or even dehydrated food in those bags. Your freeze-dried food is going to last the longest. So this is a handy dandy tool to have, but it is run using batteries. So let's say you don't have batteries, you don't have electricity, but you want to seal some jars. Well, this is kind of a fun thing. It's called a brake bleeder. I love it. I think it's really cool. And then you just get these lid attachments. They come with food savers, or you can buy them separately. And let me just get a jar here and a lid. So this is a wide mouth lid. And then you fit the correct lid. And then, I know, a brake bleeder. It's kind of cool. You put the tube in there, and then you just continue to pump until it gets to the right pressure. And I go to about anywhere between 10 and 15 pounds PSI in here, you'll see. And it just takes a minute. Yeah, your arm might get a little bit tired, but you just keep going, and it should totally seal this lid. You'll see in just a second. and lots of fun ways to seal your food. Very creative. All right, let's see if it sealed it. Gotta take the tube out first. There we go. Nice and sealed. Isn't that cool? So lots of fun ways to seal things. Here's another tip on sealing different items for your food storage. I like to do popcorn because it's such a fun thing to have, and it's a great snack, and it lasts for a long time in here. It's also gluten-free, and you can do a lot with popcorn. So I just use the sealer, like I showed you before, and I seal a bunch of popcorn. I just buy it in bulk, and you seal it up like this. And then we have probably a 2-year supply of popcorn for our family. Also, if you're wanting to do buckets of food, got these large buckets, and using a sealer that I'm going to show you in a minute, you can do massive bags of beans, wheat, rice, oats, sugar, whatever you want to put into these big buckets. And yeah, this has got a resealable lid, but I also use the sealer on it. So you can use these nice big bags. And then I also use these to seal my freeze-dried food. Let me show you how this little handy dandy sealer works. It's Harvest Right, comes with your freeze dryer. And I'm gonna show you how to seal some bags. All right, I'm going to demonstrate now how to use this sealer that you get with your Harvest Right freeze dryer. I'm doing sliced onions. Look how beautiful they are. I label the packaging, of course, with the year on it. These are the oxygen absorbers, and as you can see, the little tab is pink. Once oxygen hits the bag, that oxygen indicator actually turns purple. But when I reseal it with this machine, and I'll do that a little bit later, then the tab will turn back to pink, which means that your oxygen absorbers are still good. All right, now you got to make sure that all of your onions or your food is completely dry. And you just scoop them up with this little scooper. I test the dryness to make sure it's crunchy and not moist, and you can feel if there are any cool damp spots. So that's what I'm doing here, is making sure that all of the pieces are just right. Now this little tool is nice in scooping up the onions or any of your food. And now I'm going to add an oxygen absorber and seal this bag. So the sealer is really nice. You just have to make sure that you smooth out the top and push it down on this sealer so that you can get a nice seal and there aren't any lumps in the bag. So I plan on just doing this one seal on the one side, then I turn the bag over and I seal the back just for extra measure. It's not necessary, but I still do it. And there you go. Beautiful, awesome onions. All right, so I've kind of put you through a crash course of the equipment that you can gather to do your home canning and preserving. And hopefully you've been able to learn a little bit from that, but I'm going to tell you the ultimate way to preserve your food and why. And I believe it's through freeze drying. And I do have a freeze dryer. It's the large Harvest Right freeze dryer. And I really enjoy it. I do have a video that I'm going to make about the pros and cons of owning a freeze dryer. So watch for that. But first, let's gather the equipment that you need. Of course, you need your freeze dryer. Actually, I don't have my freeze dryer here, but here is an image of one that's similar to mine. And I really enjoy having a large. Sometimes it's hard to fill it all up, and other times I don't have enough space. So it just depends on what you're doing. Now, I highly recommend that not only do you get the 5 trays with it, but you get 5 extra. So you'll want 10 trays. And the purpose for that is so simply you can have another batch waiting in the freezer. And I pre-freeze everything. it's a rare occasion that I put something in unfrozen. I might be in a hurry if I'm doing that, but I like to pre-freeze before I put anything into the freeze dryer. It's less strain on your freeze dryer. They have to freeze first, then go through the freeze drying process. So if you have it pre-frozen, that's good. And then these are nice little silicone mats. I bought, let's see, 5 to 10 of these. And they're nice to have. I thought I would use them more than what I do, but makes cleanup a little bit easier. So those are those mats there. And then I like to just get a small little pastry scraper that you can get the food off of there easily. Here's another handy tool that I find very interesting. It's actually a pet brush. I know that seems interesting, but I use it to puncture blueberries or other things that need to be punctured. It's a lot of work to do blueberries, to freeze dry them, but I use this as a little tool to just mash them and get the skins or the membranes punctured. And then I found these little tray dividers that fit nicely on the corners of each tray so that they can stack easily in the freezer. If you have a 3D printer, you might be able to do that. You can just Google these and find out. In fact, I will put that link in the description below for you. All right, so the trays, the silicone mats, the little tray dividers, and then it's nice to get some of these little silicone molds as well. I do, I don't know, yogurt bites or Jell-O bites or any kind of fun little dessert you want to do. These are even smaller for yogurt bites. Sometimes these are great, or another time you can just like do little dollops with a little dropper on your trays for yogurt bites or other things if you feel like that's easier. I like to get the 7 ml bags through Harvest Right. They're the ones I use. And then you can have the smaller bags as well. 7 ml is just a higher grade, nicer Mylar bag, which is what I recommend. And then of course, oxygen absorbers I get through Harvest Right as well. One of my favorite things to freeze dry is spaghetti. I think it tastes almost the same as fresh from your kitchen. So I like to freeze dry spaghetti. And then we grow a lot of asparagus. And so we do a lot of asparagus. And that's super healthy to eat right out of the jar. And then I've done rotisserie chickens. So I get the rotisserie chicken and freeze dry it. Of course, because I live on a raspberry farm, we have access to a lot of raspberries, so we freeze dry a lot of raspberries. You have to do extra dry time on the raspberries because there are seeds that hold moisture, so you'll want to do extra dry time. Now, speaking of that, some people will buy a moisture camera or a thermometer or whatever you call them. I have never done that. They're a little bit pricey. I should probably get one, but I just dry my food extra dry, and then you can also weigh it before you put it in and weigh it afterwards to make sure you get all the liquid out, okay? But again, I just do extra dry time, especially with my fruit and anything with seeds, tomatoes, raspberries. Get all that moisture out of there. And then I also have chickens, and so we have lots of eggs that will freeze dry the eggs. And with the price of eggs right now, I'm actually going through my freeze dried eggs. So I'm using a lot of those. Those are some of my favorite things to freeze dry, and sky's the limit basically with the freeze dryer. I'll tell you why freeze drying is the best way. And simply because you maintain the nutrition, you maintain the color, you maintain the shape of the food better than dehydrated, and you have a longer shelf life of 25 years. As you can see with canning, when I do anything in the jars, you have to boil it and cook it. And a lot of times when you're cooking food, the nutrition's also boiled out or cooked out. The nutrition is not lost in a freeze drying process. So by far, freeze drying is the best way to do your food. And then you've got that long shelf life as well. And it's nutritious, delicious, and just a great way to store your food. Now, with that being said, if you feel like all of this equipment is overwhelming, all of the processes that you have to go through to process your food is overwhelming, if you don't own a garden or maintain a garden and have food like that and you have to buy it anyways, buying it, processing it, and then having it on your shelf often is more money than than just getting it elsewhere. So I am a consultant for a company called Thrive Life Freeze-Dried Food. It's the largest freeze-drying food company in the world. I've been a consultant for nearly 15 years now, and I think the food is superior. It's amazing. And you have a 25-year shelf life. So if you feel like, you know what, I don't want to do any of that canning, I don't want to have to mess with getting a freeze dryer and the cost and all that fun stuff, then check out my link below. I'm of course a Thrive Life consultant, and so you can click on there and order anything that you want that's freeze-dried food. And you can get the eggs and milk and cheese and fruits and vegetables and meat and gluten-free flour, and sky's the limit. Thanks for tuning in and watching Farm to Table with Amber, where we can grow, cook, and eat together.